The Shell oil rig Appomattox stands 16 stories tall and is as wide as 2 football fields. Amazingly, its weight surpasses even that of an aircraft carrier. This oil platform, known as Appomattox, is currently located 134 kilometers off the coast of Louisiana in the Gulf of Mexico. However, its journey began several years ago, thousands of miles away in South Korea, where thousands of workers and engineers were engaged in constructing this massive oil platform. After 7 years of relentless effort, when Appomattox was finally completed, the engineers faced a challenge they had never encountered before. The problem was transporting this massive structure from South Korea to the Gulf of Mexico. To accomplish this, the world's largest marine transport vessel was summoned. Lifting the oil platform and placing it onto this vessel was a task that would take at least 7 days. But suddenly, news broke that a storm had formed in the Pacific Ocean, which had escalated into a super typhoon. This level of typhoon occurs only once every 20 years, with winds reaching speeds of 315 kilometers per hour. In just 7 days, this typhoon could strike the South Korean coast at any moment. And as we all know, when a super typhoon makes landfall, it leaves destruction in its wake. For the workers, engineers, and transport experts, the challenge now was to complete a 7-day task in just 3 days. If the Appomattox oil platform was not lifted from the shipyard and loaded onto the marine vessel within 72 hours, years of hard work could be lost in an instant. This crisis shook the entire management team from top to bottom. This oil platform was the biggest project of the oil company, meaning there was no room for even a minor mistake. To avoid the super typhoon and ensure Appomattox departed ahead of schedule, additional workers were brought in. These workers toiled day and night to ready the platform for transport as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, management was in constant contact with meteorological experts, monitoring the typhoon's movements. They hoped that the super typhoon might change its course, but their hopes were dashed when they received confirmation that the storm was heading directly towards South Korea from the Pacific Ocean. With tremendous effort, the workers completed all remaining tasks in just 3 days. Now the next step was to lift the massive structure and place it onto the floating dock. The weight of this structure was a staggering 143,100 tons, more steel than what was used in the construction of the Burj Khalifa. Using massive hydraulic jacks, the platform was pushed inch by inch onto the floating dock. Once in place, tugboats pulled the dock away from the shipyard, guiding it toward the waiting marine vessel. This vessel is the world's largest marine transport ship, capable of carrying 98,000 tons with ease. It was on this vessel that Appomattox would travel to the other side of the world, to the Gulf of Mexico. The next morning, Appomattox was offloaded from the floating dock, and for the first time, it floated on water. Tugboats then towed the platform to the designated loading point where the marine vessel was waiting. Meanwhile, the super typhoon was rapidly approaching South Korea, keeping management under intense pressure. Now only 48 hours remained before the typhoon struck, and as it drew closer, signs of its arrival became evident. The ocean's waves and winds were intensifying, a major red flag for Appomattox. The timing was extremely critical. Loading an oil platform onto a vessel is a highly complex task. First, the vessel fills its internal water tanks, allowing it to sink into the water. Then, tugboats guide the oil platform over the vessel. Finally, the vessel pumps out the water, lifting itself and the platform above sea level. But this task is not as easy as it looks in animation. For this process to succeed, the sea must remain completely calm. If the waves are rough, Appomattox would not align correctly with the vessel, posing a significant risk to both the vessel and the oil platform. Due to the super typhoon, the sea was already turbulent, making the process nearly impossible. Meanwhile, time was running out and stress levels were skyrocketing. Fortunately, the meteorological department informed the team that they would get a 2-hour window of calm seas the following morning. If the job wasn't completed within those 2 hours, there would be no second chance. By then, the super typhoon would be just 36 hours away. As predicted, the ocean was completely calm in the early morning. Seizing the opportunity, the oil platform was swiftly towed onto the vessel, which then drained its water tanks, lifting the massive structure out of the sea. Just hours before the super typhoon struck, Appomattox successfully departed from South Korea. Shell had completed the first challenge of protecting its oil platform from the storm, but this was only the beginning. After several months of travel, the oil platform finally arrived in South Texas, where it had to be offloaded again. There were 4 modules that were being manufactured there. These modules were fitted onto the oil platform, and once again, it was prepared for its final journey, 130 kilometers offshore, where it would remain for the next 40 years. After 7 years of effort, the moment had finally arrived to connect Appomattox to the oil well, located 30,000 feet below. The platform was floating in waters that were 7,400 feet deep, so deep that 3 Burj Khalifas could be stacked within it. But surprisingly, the oil reservoir Appomattox needed to connect to was another 5,600 feet below that. At such depths, the underwater pressure is extreme, making human intervention impossible. The only way to connect Appomattox to the oil source was through remotely operated underwater vehicles. An installation crew working from a separate platform used cranes to lower these ROVs into the ocean. This was an incredibly delicate operation, requiring the pipelines to be aligned perfectly with the oil well's opening at a depth of 7,400 feet. The entire mission was controlled by operators from above, much like a video game. Fortunately, the task was successfully completed on the first attempt. The next step was transferring the pipeline from the installation platform to Appomattox. This process, called riser transfer, involved 4 separate vessels working simultaneously. First, a chain was extended from Appomattox, which the ROV transported to the second ship. This ship then passed the chain to another platform, which finally pulled the pipeline toward Appomattox. Once the connection was established, the final phase began, drilling down 22,600 feet to reach the oil reservoir. After months of drilling, the pipeline finally reached the oil source, and it was time to pump the first barrel of oil. The entire team gathered for this moment. With the press of a button, the oil pump was activated. As the first drops of oil emerged from 30,000 feet below, the excitement on everyone's faces was priceless. 7 years of hard work by workers, engineers, and management had finally paid off. Appomattox now produces 175,000 barrels of oil per day, enough fuel to power 4 million vehicles daily. Shell estimates that Appomattox will continue producing oil for the next 40 years, until 2060. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and share,